Good evening and welcome, everyone. International Women's Day is traditionally celebrated by the community across Waterloo region via a range of activities that celebrate the women who have made and continue to make a difference in the region. New for this year, 2023, the Women in Communications and Technology Waterloo region are working in collaboration with organizations representing this vibrant community to present to you 3 youth events during the month of March in celebration of women in Waterloo region. This year's International Women's Day theme is Embrace Equity. For International Women's Day and beyond, let's all fully embrace equity. Equity isn't just a nice to have, it's a must have. A focus on gender equity needs to be part of every society's DNA. We can all truly embrace equity. It's not just something we say, it's not just something we write about. It's something we need to think about, know, and embrace. It's what we believe in unconditionally. Equity means creating an inclusive world. Collectively, we can all embrace equity. International Women's Day 2023 Waterloo Region's 3 youth events are over the month of March, will include conversations, affirmations thanking our community through a series of video vignettes that highlight women and embrace organizations who have helped to choose to embrace equity and have helped to create an inclusive world that empowers women and celebrates their achievements. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Now I'd like to go over our land acknowledgement. Waterloo region, including the 3 cities and 4 townships, is located on the traditional territories of the Neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Waterloo region is part of the Haldimand Tract, which encompasses 6 miles on either side of the Grand River from the north near Dundalk to where it empties into Lake Erie and Port Maitland. The use of this land was promised to Haudenosaunee Confederation on October 25th, 1974, to compensate them for the loss of their lands in upstate New York when they allied with the British who were defeated in the American Revolutionary War. Today, Waterloo region is home to Indigenous people from many distinct First Nations as well as Métis and Inuit. I would like to thank the members of our 2023 steering committee. You might say some familiar faces on there. Thank you to all these courageous and brave women for sharing their time and their experiences with us. Also, a thank you to our sponsors, BMO, Apply Board, University of Waterloo, Perimeter Institute, Profound Impact, Grand River Hospital, Vidyard, Kitchener Rotary, OpenText, Durrell Communications, Jacqueline Waddy Consulting. Thank you to all of these sponsors. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We will be doing a 30-minute panel discussion followed by 15-minute Q&A. Please enter your questions in the chat. Enter your questions in the Q&A. And if we don't get to your questions this evening, we will be providing an email address at the end of the presentation so that you can submit them. Our session is also being recorded and will be available for viewing and sharing through the website. Now, I'd like to take the time to introduce our panel leader for the evening, Tahira Bilal. And to tell you a little bit about our panel. As you know, Waterloo region is in the unique position of being represented by women at civic, regional, provincial, and federal politics levels. Women in politics in Waterloo, in Canada, and around the world face challenges not shared by their male colleagues. In 2023, we saw the supported influx of many strong female leaders in all levels of government in Waterloo region. We are pleased to present several outstanding women in this panel that will reflect on their journey towards a political career and how they maintain leadership in today's challenging environment. Our moderator this evening, Dr. Tahira Bilal. Let me read to you her bio. Dr. Tahira Bilal Waseem is the owner and director of the Canadian Health and Safety Education, a first aid training company, which partners with the Canadian Red Cross. Dr. Bilal has also been an active member and volunteer with many organizations, including being on the board of the directors of CMW, which is the Coalition of Muslim Women, and PCA Pakistan Canada Association. She's a graduate of Leadership Waterloo class of 2021, And during that period, she has developed a lot of interest in affordable housing, and her hope and desire is to continue to give back to the community. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tahira Bilal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for such a wonderful introduction. I'm really so excited to be part of this session today and welcome all of you. And now I would like to introduce our wonderful panelists. So we can go one by one. I'll start with Marsha Schlueter. Am I pronouncing correct? Okay. So she is the community liaison specialist with YMCA of Three Rivers Immigrant Services. She has been with YMCA since 2017, and she co-facilitates the mentorship program. So basically the mentorship program, it matches the internationally trained professionals new to Canada with mentors in their professional fields. And Marsha is passionate about supporting newcomers to build both meaningful social and professional networks in Canada. Next, we have, I can see on my screen, the Honorable Bardish Chagger. She is the first woman to serve as Member of Parliament for the riding of Waterloo. She got involved in politics at the age of 13 when she was volunteering with her dad in the 1993 election campaign. And she was elected in October 2015 and re-elected in 2019 and 2021. She served in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet as Minister of Small Business and Tourism, Government House Leader, and Minister of Diversity and Inclusion and Youth. So one of our, and she is the only youngest panelist, is Meena Waseem. Hi, Meena. So she has been recently elected as the current youngest trustee of the Waterloo Region District School Board. Meena is an advocate for accessible education and inclusive workplace practices. She is pursuing her Bachelor of Commerce and has worked on provincial level advocacy through Fredericton Chamber of Commerce in New Brunswick and designed leadership pipeline programs for racial as women at Deloitte. She is National Lawrence Scholar and Kitchener-Waterloo's Youngest Woman of the Year. We have our Ward 7 Councillor for the City of Waterloo, Julie Wright, with us. Hey, Julie. So she is the Director at Partners for Action at the University of Waterloo since October 2020. Previously, she had led Waterloo Global Science Initiative, WGSI, through its startup phase to successfully launching a decade-long summit series that tackled global decarbonization, the redesign of secondary education, the acceleration of the global energy access, and the implementation of UN Sustainable Development Goals in Canada. And lastly, who does not know Karen Redman? She is the regional chair for Waterloo Region, having been elected in the October 2018 municipal election. Karen has been dedicated to public service for more than 20 years. She has represented the community at several levels of government, such as municipal, federal, and Board of Education. She has served as chair of the Independent Living Center of Waterloo Region, president of the Rotary Club Kitchener from 2014 to 2015, and a board member of Martin Lutheran University College. Karen is the recipient of the Queen's Jubilee Medal and the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. Welcome all of you to our panel. So are you all really excited for today's panel? Yes, we are all set. So let's get started. I'll start with Karen Redman. That what piece of advice would you give to your grade 12 self?
So I have to tell you, Tahira, I love these questions and they've made me think. I would say to my grade 12 self, enjoy the journey. It is a journey. I've always been a list maker, and I was going into the University of Toronto. I was going to be an occupational therapist, and I had my whole life planned out, and nothing went to plan. And if you're always planning what you're going to do, you sometimes miss opportunity. So I would say be open to opportunity and know that it is all about the journey, not the destination.
Oh, that's great. That's great advice. Okay, so now I'd like to ask Marsha, where is Marsha? Marsha is there. So Marsha, you have a lot of community experience. So has your past community involvement experience helped you with your current role?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I would say most of all, though, the most largest or strongest example was my parents. Growing up, my parents always volunteered in the community. They were always the ones, who would open their doors and their hearts to anyone that was in need. So I really learned a lot from them, and it really shaped who I am today, because they were always volunteering in the community, always telling me, be a part of our community, because collectively we are what makes up a community. So they instilled that in me in a very young age. And also I can give three examples of how some of my past experiences have assisted me in my current role. So going back all the way to middle school, I had taken a typing course. And I remember during the class having my hands, on the home keys, A, S, D, F, J, K, L, semicolon, and, repeating that. And I was thinking to myself, when am I really ever going to use this? And then we fast forward later, and I was assigned a school placement at a volunteer center in Toronto. And so some of the duties involved was meeting with volunteers, collecting their information, finding out where their area of interest was, and then ensuring that they receive the best fit for their volunteer experience. And I also had to make a lot of cold calls. I don't know if we make cold calls anymore, but back in the day, we used to make cold calls. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Before this experience, I wasn't even able to call and order a pizza, let alone, create a rapport with someone over the phone, with a complete stranger. And at that time too, I remembered, feeling disappointed because I felt, there were so many other placements that I could have done that was like grassroots organizations really getting in there and involved. But then as time goes on, then you start to learn. Then in 2016, I was asked to be a volunteer for the planning committee for the Haspel reunion. That's where I grew up. And so it was pretty exciting to be giving back in that way. And I remember, training the new volunteers, and I was a volunteer manager for that committee. So, you're meeting with volunteers, you're training them, you're placing them in positions so that everything runs smoothly. And you work with a lot of different personalities. So that was also a learning and a skill for me that I learned. And so now, fast forward now to my current role. So as the community liaison specialist for the mentorship program, I'm making those connections with individuals and community partners. I type a lot of emails, those monthly reports, those presentations. So that's where the typing came in. I make several calls a day. So touching base with mentees and mentors, reaching out to potential volunteers. And then lastly, managing these volunteers and, making those great matches between the mentor and the mentee. So you're continually networking, and I just, in short, what I'm saying is, with all those examples, is that anything you learn in life, there's nothing that goes to waste. These are all kind of stepping stones that go towards your future. So that's.
So that's actually great advice, Marsha, because most of our participants today are youth, and we also encourage them to come forward and volunteer and give back to the community, because they should not think that they are wasting their time for anything, because this is how they will learn that these things that they do today will be beneficial for them tomorrow, right? So nothing goes waste. Thank you, Marsha. So Julie, I would like to ask you, we have seen that most of the time our students, they are struggling finding the right program for studying in university or colleges. So what advice would you give to our youth how to choose the programs in universities and colleges?
Hi, everyone. Just following on the heels of Marsha, sometimes you don't know that the thing that you're doing is actually going to be really useful later on. I can use myself an example. You know, I studied English and anthropology. Had no idea how useful it would be in how I synthesize information now in my research role. And it's just one of those things where you have to be willing to connect the dots along your journey, like Karen was saying. I have a young woman who's working with me right now, and she's working towards Canadian citizenship. You know, she came here from India. She was a researcher at the University of Waterloo, and she has a master's in physics. And she's decided that she wants to work in policy. And you know, so sometimes you get a certain way down the road, and you determine actually the thing that is my heart work, the stuff that is going to fuel me going forward, is something else. And you just have to pick up all the things that you've done along the way and think about how they can contribute to what you're going to do next. And it's really important to be open and flexible. And like Karen said, you know, just sort of dig into that journey and realize that you have so much to give. Like, I think that's where it comes from. You can always find a way to make yourself relevant as long as your heart is in it.
Right. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Meena, you are the youngest panelist for today. So what do you think are the positives and challenges? So you must be facing some challenges as well of being so young and being a school board trustee at the same time. So do you want to share with us, like, how are you feeling up till now?
Well, let me just start by saying these are really great questions. And every time, you know, one panelist was wrapping up, I was like, it's about to be me next. Like I was getting ready to answer. And then it wouldn't be me. So I was like, okay, sit back and absorb the wisdom. But now it's me. So it's been, I think I started in this role in November. And let me just say that being in the public eye definitely has a slew of challenges. One of them for sure is that making decisions, there's a lot of eyes, you feel a lot of pressure. And so sometimes it can be really hard to focus in on what your values are, where your decision making is coming from. And I'll say that I personally don't believe in, particularly today's age, being young is a barrier at all to doing anything you want to do. If you're a young person listening to this right now, I just turned 22, and I want to put this into perspective that we have access to more connections across the globe than ever before. You can literally message somebody sitting out in Singapore and ask them how they're doing what they're doing. We have access to more information. I can log in to any journal site and read cutting edge research coming out of Stanford or Harvard. There is no limitation to that. So I don't want you to feel that you being young is a barrier to being in any of these spaces. Just because you may not see people that look like you does not mean that you can't be that person. And for any moment where people, you know, come up to me and they say like, you're so young, how are you doing this? I really can't emphasize enough the advice that every single speaker has already said, where lean into going into spaces that make you a little bit uncomfortable, absorb knowledge around you. I remember being in middle school and I used to read a lot, and I used to read everything from like fiction books, like don't worry, those like rom-com type novels, the mystery and fantasy novels. I wasn't out here reading like an astrophysics book every Wednesday, don't worry. But I do remember that I read a lot, and I read a lot of different things. And the way that this benefited me so much is by the time I got to high school, I don't think there was ever a problem, whether it was socially, academically, or just in any other capacity that I came across, which I felt as if I hadn't seen or lived before. I remember reading books about Julius Caesar and thinking about the different political challenges that came up in his cabinet. And I remember seeing it reflected in some of the governments we see today. I remember reading a book about Stephen Hawking, and when he first started having his disability symptoms show up, and how he had to reframe the idea of who he was. That came up for me when I remember like some small challenges came up in my life in high school. I was like, none of the challenges I went through, even though I was young, felt new, because I was really focused on absorbing the knowledge and information from people around me, whether it was through books, whether it was through volunteering for organizations like the CMW. You know, you get so much just by asking questions and listening. So I cannot emphasize that enough, that just because you're young, there is nothing that you can't do. if you're not paying attention, learning, and being really open to putting yourself out there.
Thank you. Bardish, I would like to ask you that as MP, you must be receiving a lot of public opinion. So sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. So positive is always good. You say, hey, thank you very much. Yes, I'm doing great work. But sometimes you do come across like negative backlash. So how do you deal with that negative backlash, especially in the public?
Dr. Bilal, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here with my fellow panelists. It's interesting. I think you really have to look at sometimes when you are in elected office, where it is coming from. And oftentimes we're not always equipped to deal with situations in a way of highlighting the positive. So usually when there are challenges in your world, we come out with perhaps not the best way to share a message. So my job has really been about reading between the lines and trying to understand where people are at. And for me, the Waterloo that I have been born and raised in, this amazing region, which has elected me to represent the riding of Waterloo, as the first woman in this role in the riding of Waterloo, and we've had other women represent the federal government, including Karen Redman, who's here with us today. It's really just finding out where people are at. And when we can actually better understand what people are trying to share, we might actually be able to have better outcomes. So really, how do I channel that? I think about my family and the challenges they had, and the fact that we sometimes had, hurdles that perhaps did not have to be in place, but they were. And I'm not sure that the feedback that my family was providing was always received with the same compassion that it should have been. So I try, but I can't help being who I am. So I am sometimes really upfront. People might find me confrontational, but I really just am trying to understand where people are at. So I try to, kill it with kindness. Try to smile and let them know that I want to hear from them. And I really do try to focus on what people are trying to share. But I can tell you, I would love more messages about people having good days and telling us about the great things. But often when things are going good, as an elected official, I don't always hear from them. So if things are going well, let me know. But if things are not going well, also let me know. And something that I'm trying to do in this role really is wanting to hear from more people, because as we can get more people involved in the democratic process by having a say, the better we can do for them. And so if I don't hear from you, I don't know where you stand or what's on your mind. And if it's on your mind, it should be on my mind. So rest assured that if it's on your mind, I want it to be on my mind.
All right. Honestly, you are very helpful from my personal experience. I must appreciate. Yes. And Bardish, again, one more question from you. What advice would you give to our young people who have joined today, who want to come to your career, who want to follow in your footsteps?
Don't say no. When my grandfather came to Canada in the early 70s, he never would have imagined that his granddaughter would put her name on a ballot, let alone be elected, let alone serve at the cabinet table. But it can happen with hard work. And as women, the reality is that in certain places, we still have to work harder than our counterparts. And that's where it comes down to know that people want to see you succeed. If I can help you along the way, let me be there for you. So I would just say, just do it. And what's the worst thing that happens? If you run for office, sometimes people say the worst thing that can happen is that you're elected, because your world will change. And I think most people can understand that. It's kind of like Meena, look at Meena knows. It's kind of like applying for a job, and what's the toughest thing that could happen? You get the job.
Yes.
So really I say go for it. Expect the worst, plan for the best, and just enjoy it. Just like everyone else has said, every day that we have here is a blessing. And if you stay grounded as to why you chose to do it, remember why you did it. And if that means putting it in the corner of a mirror, do it, because then you remember every single day, even when the world and the trials and tribulations take over, that you stay focused on why you're there. And we need you to do whatever you can do. And each of us will do it in our own unique, authentic ways. And each of us needs to do it in our unique, authentic ways. I always admire other people and I want to be like them, but the only person I can really bring every single day is Bardish Chagger. And that's what I'm going to keep doing. So each individual can bring themselves and contribute in any meaningful way that you want to. If you have something nice to say, shout it from the rooftops. If you've got something not so nice to say, either find a nicer way to say it, or perhaps just hold on until you can, because there's just too much negativity in the world. And we really do just need to shine a light on hope. We need to make sure we own it, and keep doing it. But to any young person, and by young, now that Meena's here talking about being 22, everyone is young in my world. Just contribute, because it's never too late. And every single day that you can make this country and our community better, you know what, I'm grateful to you. So don't stop.
Right. Thank you. What a good piece of advice. Thank you so much, Bardish. We all know that affordable housing is becoming a big issue in our region. And we know that we have Karen with us, who had been working with Habitat for Humanity from 2010 to 2018 as Chief Executive Officer. And one of the goals of Habitat for Humanity is to have people like find equity for people who do not have access to the housing. So I would like to ask Karen that how has working for this goal for so many years influenced your life, personal life, and your role as the regional chair?
So I love that question too. And I would have to tell you that, again, it was an opportunity presented to me. I was on the board of Habitat for Humanity Waterloo region, and the executive director of the day had to leave for medical reasons. And they said, would you step off the board and serve for 30 days? And I did. 7 years later, I retired. So for me, it was a real passion. Habitat for Humanity has so many aspects of it that are just so nurturing. They're all families that are served in Waterloo region. So everybody is 1 or 2 parents and with at least 1 child under the age of 13, because research tells us that it's transformative. Just stop and imagine if you have all of your celebrations at the kitchen table that you do your homework at, you stay at the same school, you make friends. That kind of stability is a real life-changing experience for people who haven't experienced it. What I learned being at Habitat for Humanity and working with the families, and we had every faith group, every culture, there was a defined income band. Everybody had to have a job and they had to help work on their own home or somebody else's. And that's known as sweat equity. And then they had a prorated mortgage. So they paid a mortgage just like everybody else does. And when I got to know these families, what I realized is so often one bad choice or one bad break in life, or maybe a relationship that went bad, put them behind the 8 ball in a way that so many of us never face in life. And that by giving them this hand up, they contributed to the community, they created community, and it was just so gratifying. And the other thing that I thought was just amazing is, you know, when these young people, so many of you will be involved in volunteer work. And to me, volunteer work is like donating money to a charity. It's your after-tax dollars and it's your after-work time. So this is your personal time and you're investing in it. And what we heard from so many teams of volunteers was the gratification that they had from working on their house or somebody else's house was just amazing. And I don't want to hog too much time, but I do want to tell you about one of my daughters went to South Africa. She works at a big insurance company. And that had never been sort of her dream job. You know, she wasn't a 9-year-old girl going, "Ooh, I want to be in insurance." She wants to help the world. She went to South Africa to work at HIV/AIDS orphanages that my Rotary Club, Kitchener Rotary, helped build. And my husband and I went over to see her at the end of the 6 months. And I said, "Laura, you know, doesn't it break your heart that this pandemic is hollowing out a whole generation?" And she said, "You know what, Mom? I decided I would do the good that I can to the people I meet for the time that I'm here." And I have to tell you, Meena, you may only be 22, but you have so much wisdom. We could all share that kind of wisdom. So I sort of took that away as a bit of a life-changing insight from my daughter to me. So I share it with you.
Thank you, Karen. Julie, so you work at University of Waterloo and you are also our counselor for Ward 7. So what issues you are you think you are working on, and what issues are important to you as a counselor, and how do you plan to tackle those issues?
Oh, I think my whole day-to-day life is fully about climate action.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm living and breathing it. And I have been. I think, one of the interesting things that happened, I didn't set out to have a career in climate action. So my my other job outside of council is for a research initiative called Partners for Action at the University of Waterloo, and we focus on flood risk and resilience. So we try to empower Canadians and Canadian communities to be flood ready. And I didn't set out to do this. This is just one of those things where you have a branching path, and then at some point your heart starts to get really involved in the work. And that's what happened to me in 2010. I moved back to Waterloo from Calgary, where I was living, and I had this chance to work on this summit series that was hosted by the Waterloo Global Science Initiative, and it focused on transforming our society from one that was deeply invested in carbon to one that could decarbonize, and just do that work. And so this is particularly relevant too, because the design of that summit series was that we had, a whole bunch of global experts come together from all sorts of different fields, gave them the time and space to work, but they were matched with an equal cohort of young people under the age of 30. And that was amazing chemistry. Just the results that come out of bringing young people to the table in decision maker roles, it's amazing. So I've just doubled down on that. Every opportunity I've had, I want to work with young people. So at the university, it's an embarrassment of riches. I get all these graduate students and undergraduate students to work with, and they bring their energy and their amazing ideas to projects. And we work in an applied space, so I get to see the results of the work that they're doing. And then they go on and, they work in the federal government, or they work, in other city governments. They work for insurance companies. They fan out all over the place. And it's just amazing to see where people go, and that I have this opportunity to help them frame their future, help them find their passions, help them communicate their ideas really clearly. So it's all, again, I've been, just trying to drive this home, but it's all heart work. It's the stuff that you have the great passion for. That's where you will stick. Right.
My daughter also graduated last year from UW in Environment and Business. Thank you, Bardish. Thank you. And Julie, one more thing. What piece of advice you would give to your grade 12 self?
Calm down.
Great advice.
Yeah, just, you sort of put too many eggs in the what is my future going to look like basket. And, I think everyone has iterated on some version of this, but different opportunities present themselves at different times, and you just have to be ready and open to those opportunities. And you have to kind of make peace between what your brain is telling you and what your heart is telling you, and kind of find the balance through all of that. So yeah, I look back at my grade 12 self and I think, oh, you had no idea. There's fun stuff ahead.
It happens with everyone, I guess. Marsha, so one of the role of your job is to find a community need and then develop a program around that. So do you want to share with us, what is the process of finding this community need and then developing a program based on it?
For sure. So the first thing that we do is we listen. So we listen to the barriers and the concerns of our clients, and we take stock. of their needs. So then we observe the trends. What are the systemic barriers that they're facing to secure employment? And then what we do is the important piece is connecting with our community partners, asking them, what are the barriers that your clients are facing? Is it the same or is it different than what we are? And then we ask, how can we work together to help serve the community well? So we develop programs, and the thing is I want to share is that we can't do it on our own. It's not individualistic. So we ask the other organization, how can we work together to make a difference? So then once we figure out some of these things and we listen, we look at the need, we work with others, and we think also sustainability. So do we have the resources to support that program? Maybe we can create a pilot project, research if this program could continue long-term, like, do we have the infrastructure for that future? So for example, like the mentorship program, we were seeing internationally trained professionals coming to Canada, fully equipped with the skills. They have the language skills, they have the education, they have the work experience, but we were finding they weren't able to secure full-time employment in their field. So then what we thought of the idea of matching them with a mentor. And then we started seeing the doors open. People were receiving guidance and insights about the Canadian work culture as well as in their field. They were able to network, and so the doors started opening and people were starting to get employed or learning about what it is, their profession in Canada. And so that's just a simple example of how an idea became a thriving program. So that's what we do.
And I think that's a great work that you're doing with this mentorship program, because I know that when we came to Canada, there was no such program. And there was like, I was working as a medical doctor back home, but there was no help here. And then I changed my career slightly. But thanks God, now I'm running my own business. I tried different things, and but if this program was there at that time, would have helped me a lot more better.
Thank you.
So Meena, I would like to ask you, as women, we have like built-in stereotypes. So have you ever felt a disadvantage from these preconceived notions? And if yes, what are those disadvantages and how do you overcome those?
There's so much in this
So
question.
much.
So much that I could say, and I'm sure every single panelist, I'm sure many people in the audience who have their own experiences. But I think what it boils down for me is that it's much harder to be seen for who you are as opposed to what you look like or the things you represent. So I'll give you an easy example. I remember when I was running in my election back in the fall, one door that I went to, I knocked on the door, someone opened it, and I was going through my spiel. I was like, hello, my name is Meena Waseem. I'm running in this election. Have you heard about the school board? And they said, yeah, I've heard of it, but take that thing off first and then we'll talk. And I was wearing a mask because, I wanted to be safe. I was seeing a lot of people and I didn't want to risk anyone else's health. And so I responded, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, this is just to make sure that you and I are both safe. And then this person said, I'm not talking about the mask. I'm talking about that thing on your head. And I realized they were talking about my hijab. And, in an election, you're so busy. You don't really, if you know someone's not going to vote for you, you don't have the time to argue. So I said, thank you so much for your time. And I stepped away. Actually, Bardish gave me that advice. He was like, if you know it's not going to happen, then save yourself the time and save them the time too. So step away. And so I went on my way. And that was an incident that happened with someone who didn't look like me. But one time I was at a community event with a lot of, Muslim folks and people who come from the South Asian immigrant community. And I was talking to some folks, again, giving them a spiel about the school board elections. And they said, oh, Beta, are you married yet? Shouldn't you get married first? So they asked, like, why, essentially you're doing this, you're in your early 20s, but you're not yet married. Seems a little odd, like, get settled down first. And the point I'm trying to make with this is that regardless of where you go, there are always going to be people who see the label before they see you. You're going to have to fight really hard. Sometimes that means stepping away. Sometimes it means putting down the frustration that comes with those conversations, but stay focused. Stay focused. Stay around people who validate you and support you. Sometimes that takes years to build, but every moment that you feel unseen or unheard, go find someone that's going to make you feel seen, that's going to make you feel heard. And if there's no one to find, make sure you write down somewhere why you're doing what you're doing and go back to it, whether it's like in a journal, like what Bardish was saying earlier, like whether it's on a mirror, have it somewhere because you're going to need those reminders. And something that I'll add in here too is, despite all of these barriers, I have found that there is so much support out there for you if you're just willing to be honest that you have no idea what you're doing. Like, if you have the passion, if you have the drive, if there's a will, there is a way. Tell people that this is something you're considering. Ask people for support. Many of the women in this room have shown me where there's a will, there's a way. I remember Dr. Bilal, like, you organized a whole Pakistan Canada Day celebration event for us on Pakistan's Independence Day. Like, I remember you pulled that together, and we hadn't seen something like that in years in our community because of the pandemic. People were so disconnected, but she made that happen for us. And I remember it was such an amazing day. It was actually the place where I got my first speech to the community saying that I'm running.
I still remember it. Yes.
So I'm putting this out there that where there is a will, there is always going to be a way. Tell people you need their support. And especially for the women out there, we are trained to think that another woman's success means we're not going to get there, or they're taking our spot. And we have to let this notion go. When I entered university, I went to a place where not a lot of people look like me. And I was actually the first hijabi woman in that entire program. And I remember I had to fight so hard just to get basic supports, whether it was accommodations, whether it was support from profs, even in peer groups. I had to fight to get even the basic needs that I had met. But the next group of women that came in that looked like me, they didn't have to fight those same fights. They could build on it, and they could build on bigger and better things. So the point I'm trying to make is never see other women as your competition. Learn from each other. If you're starting to feel that envy, it's a sign that you want to be her. Go talk to her. Like, you're going to probably find something really valuable. So never ever think that just because someone else is winning that you can't either. We are trained to think this way, and we have to let that mentality go. So where there's a will, there's a way. And go reach out to people and go talk to people. And those barriers are going to start, you're going to find ways around those barriers very quickly.
Great answer, Meena. Very good. So, Karen, there's a question for you. When did you decide to enter politics? Is what like it was from your childhood or later in your life? Because you have been in politics since so long, so many years, and you're doing such a great work in our community. So would just love to hear what's the background, where it all started.
Well, you're very kind, but I would have to say, I started out as a trustee, Meena, and I got involved. I had been volunteering for 7 years as a puppeteer with Kids on the Block, which took puppets into the classroom that let kids talk to puppets that had disabilities, because we were trying to break through and be more inclusive. And I'm the mother of 4 children. My youngest son was going into grade 1. And I was at a fork in the road, and somebody mentioned a fork in the road earlier. And I knew that I could advocate for my kids to get what they wanted, but I knew that all parents couldn't. And so I decided that this felt like an extension of my volunteering. And I would always say that public education, quality public education, is a hill to die on, because it's a great equalizer and it gives everybody a chance to realize their potential. So I was very passionate about education, so I ran as a trustee, and then somebody offered me an opportunity to run for city council. I had done 2 terms as a trustee, so I decided I'd throw my hat in the ring, and when I wasn't successful, as Bardish was saying, I would go do something else. I was successful, and then I got tapped on the shoulder by the sitting MP, who decided for personal reasons he wasn't going to run again, to run in Kitchener as the MP. And I would have to tell you that it was an undertaking that Jean Chrétien said that when he was prime minister, and he was at the time, and he was leader of the Liberal Party, they gave 25% of women in ridings to be nominated. So I made that 25%, and I ran, and I was successful, and it was an amazing time to be an MP. But I had somebody come into the campaign office when I was nominated, and he said, "How does it feel to be a Chrétien quota queen?" And he was from another party, and I just looked at him and I said, "You know what? I'm not going to argue that this was a good election for me to be a female running, but if I didn't have the skill set and the ability to do this, I wouldn't have put my name on." And I just so want to honor what Meena said too, that, you know, our place at the table as women is to make sure there's room for other women and other diverse voices. So it's not an either or, it's all of us. And if we're there, we have to make sure that other people come behind us. So I simply was offered opportunity and threw away my list of what I thought my career was going to be. And I thought, this looks like something that could be challenging and interesting. And so far, I would say it's delivered in spades.
Thank you so much, Karen. And at this moment, I would take a little pause. I make a pause to see if there are any questions from our attendees. Let's check that. I know we were supposed to stop at 6:40, but I could not see any questions. So what is I want to know answer to okay. Bardish, let me just check if no one, yeah, there is no question. I cannot see anything, so we can go ahead. And Bardish, you can tell us. See, I saw your message. So what piece of advice would you like to give to your grade 12 self?
I was actually just kind of kidding. But you know what's interesting is I've been involved in politics since I was 13 years old. And it was mostly because I was fighting for issues that perhaps weren't always embraced within my household, like social values and so forth, that I was trying to build a more inclusive and equitable Canada. And when I ran for office in 2015, a lot of people who like know me were really surprised that I was putting my name and my face on a ballot, and like they were on signs and stuff. And when I was elected, they were kind of like, we didn't even know. So I think if I could give any advice to my grade 12 self, it would be to like trust your true friends and be proud of who you are and what you stand for. Like in high school, oftentimes we're always trying to belong and fit in and like pick the right answer. But it's also okay to be brave and know that there's other people around you who want to hear you speak up for what is really tough to do. And as you get older, and I can say this now that I'm 42, it's really easy to like not say where you stand. It's really tough to say where you stand, and you need to. And Meena, like hearing you makes my heart smile, because we're not competing against other women. We really want to see and create more space for other women, especially as we're in this space right now. And the one thing I've always loved about our region of Waterloo is that Waterloo doesn't compete against Canadian cities and provinces and territories. We compete against the world. And we know the better Canada does, the better we do. So as much as the world needs more Canada, Canada needs more Waterloo, because our competition isn't within. And I think that's just kind of where it comes down to, and it's tough sometimes, but be brave, be bold. And if you stand on something, be true to it. And, you know, sometimes it's worth it. And I wish I just had known that a little bit earlier. So I'm just going to let others know, like whoever you are, be who you are from day one. Because the more you can be yourself and be the best version of yourself, the better our community can do.
Yeah, very good. And Bardish, I agree with you that if you have a group of good friends, they are really a support for you. You're really lucky if you get those good friends. So now we have a question here. I read out, and I think Meena is willing to answer that. So this is, my name is Nasma, and I was born and raised in Kerala, India. I came to Canada at the age of 23 as an international student. I completed MSc in Electrical and Computer Engineering from University of Waterloo, and I'm currently working as a hardware engineer in Waterloo. Outside of my work, I also serve on the board of Women's Crisis Services Waterloo region. I am 35 now, and throughout these years, I have participated in several events focusing on women empowerment. One thing I have noticed is that most of these events hardly consider the realities of BIPOC or immigrant women like me. The self-help tips offered to women don't take into consideration the social, cultural, economic factors that constrain our lives. So Meena, I think, was willing to answer. Yes,
Yeah.
Meena, go ahead, please.
Okay, first, Tahira, can we just acknowledge like what a baddie you are? Oh my goodness, the like everything from the masters in electrical and computer engineering to like working with the women's crisis services on their board. That's incredible. Just you have so much under your belt, so I'm sure you have wisdom that you could probably offer us. But yes, your question hits really close to home. My family and I immigrated to Canada when I was around 7 years old. And at the time, both my parents, my dad was studying. He actually also went to the University of Waterloo as an international student for his master's. And I remember he would be in school and during the daytime doing his work. And then he would be working multiple part-time jobs to help support our family. And the same happened with my mom as well. And both of them had degrees from back home that were considered invalid. Part of the reason why the work, Marsha, you're doing is so incredible. And I remember when I was growing up, I had to take on the role of like a third parent, which a lot of people really applaud volunteering, really getting out there in your community. But for me, being at home and supporting my family unit was my work. Like I had no other option, because if I let that go, who was going to look after my younger siblings? Who was going to support their upbringing? The investment that my family had made in coming here wouldn't be worth it if I wasn't helping to support the family unit. And in my personal experience, I have found that when I was growing up and there were these types of leadership events, there was often little acknowledgement. But it was similar to what you just did here, where I remember I would ask those questions. And sometimes I would even ask the questions expecting an answer from the panel. I would ask the question hoping that the people in the audience would start thinking about it. It's the same thing that I did when I got to business school and I was in classes where the profs, the students, nobody understood the lived realities that I came from. Nobody knew what it was like to be a scholarship student from an immigrant background. Nobody understood that in that room. And I just want to say, having sat in front of many different panels, having gone through a lot of different processes for support for funding my university education, you own your truth and you keep asking these types of questions, because there are so many other women that may not even have the language skills, that may not even have the courage or the stability to be able to ask. So you are in a place right now to ask those questions, and there's no like perfect answer, but I just really want to applaud the fact that the best way to keep doing, bringing in these conversations and to consider the social, cultural, and economic factors that constrain people's lives is to ask these questions or to bring them up. The way that you have formed an ability to tell your story is helping other people learn. The best way I can remember this is when I was in high school, I was applying for a scholarship, and it was a scholarship that was going to make or break the access to university education for me at the time. And one of the questions that an interviewer had asked, and they were a Canadian millionaire, so well beyond my net worth at the time. I was probably in the negatives, and I remember that they asked a question about like, why should we choose you for this scholarship? And I basically answered along these lines. I said, I may not have the most volunteer experiences, I may not know the most amount of people, but I want you to broaden your scope of what leadership means. Because if we're talking about leadership capacity, I've been doing it since I was like 7 years old. And these are the types of questions that are going to help more people broaden their scope of what leadership means. It's why when I started working after my business degree, I was like in consulting firms working on broadening the scope of what we look for in candidates. Where if you're looking for a project manager doesn't just have to have project management on their resume. Maybe it's a single mom who took time off work to support raising her family. Because motherhood is a form of project management. Why can't we acknowledge that? You're balancing a lot of different work streams. Why are we not? So this is exactly what you are doing. Keep doing it, because it's helping more people than you realize. And I'm sure that even just now, people in the audience either really resonated with this, or they're already starting to think of, like, how would I approach another candidate or another friend or another colleague that I meet the next time I see them. So thank you for your question.
Thank you so much, Meena. And it's a very detailed explanation and answer for her question. Thank you so much. And there is one last question that we can take because we are running out of time. And this is, I'm asking from Marsha because it is related to her. Yes, Marsha. So there is a question that for youth and racialized community members, how can they reach out to you for mentorship opportunities, making sure they get a reply/opportunities from you for becoming emerging/future leaders? What mentorship programs do you have for high schoolers?
Oh, okay. So for the mentorship program that I co-facilitate, it is for adults who are new to Canada. We do have our employment services department in the YMCA that does have a program called YJC, or Youth Job Connection. So if you would like to connect with me, I can definitely help you in that way. But for my program itself, no, I don't have a youth related program, but we do have something at the YMCA that would be very helpful for both leadership and mentorship.
Okay, that's great, Marsha. And I will let that lady to connect with you. I know her, so she can connect with you
Good.
directly.
Perfect.
So, yeah,
Thank
that
you
would
so
be
much.
great if you can help her with that. Okay, thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you.
And with this, we are coming to the end of our lovely and interesting conversation. So I hope you all had a great time and amazing conversation, especially for our youth. I think they have enjoyed and they must get some good advice, piece of advice from this session. And I would like to thank all our audience who are here, and especially our panelists for taking time out from the busy schedules to come here, share their knowledge and experience with us. So thank you all for joining us today. And lastly, I would especially like to thank our team, without whose joint effort this event would not have been possible. So thank you, our team. And now I will let Jacqueline take over for the last few comments before we finish today's session.
Thank you so much. I'm blown away every time I hear a group of women get together and speak about the issues that you've faced, the things you've overcome, the challenges, and just the positivity. And there's so much good learning. And so I really hope that the people that were on today, I mean, I always get so much out of it, but for the youth that are here tonight, thank you for joining us. And I hope there's something that you take away and go, wow. And sometimes it's just one little thing that makes a difference in your life. And I think there's a number of things here that could make a difference. And I encourage and challenge you to reach out and find your way and do what you're passionate about. So thank you. I do want to share, we have some upcoming events. We have 2 more youth programs, a panel on women in business, and then a panel for not-for-profit organizations. And then we also have 3 more panels, defending women's rights, women in politics, and women in media. So please do take the opportunity to register for any of these. And finally, really important information here. This event was recorded, and so you can actually rewatch any parts of it. Check it out on the website. If you have any follow-up questions for our panelists, please email us and we will be happy to get the answer for you. And for the students, this session might actually be eligible for volunteer hours. So please do ask your guidance counselors if you can use the hour. And to wrap up, a reminder to all of you, don't just say it, think it, be it, do it, value it, truly embrace it. Equity comes in all forms, embrace it in all forms. Share the passion and excitement that comes from valuing and supporting differences. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening, and we do hope to see you at our next event. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.